Mafia, the city of Lost Heaven, is officially 20 years old. And today we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Mafia game that launched, obviously, the Mafia franchise. And I don't remember if I actually picked up this game on day one. I most likely didn't. I probably found out about it like weeks later or perhaps even months later. But eventually I got my hands on Mafia, the City of Lost Heaven, put it on my PC, and I was blown away with how beautiful, amazing, and realistic the world of Lost Heaven was. Mafia, the City of Lost Heaven, according to Wikipedia, officially came out on August 29th, 2002 for PC, made by Illusion Softworks, which would eventually become 2K Czech and then merge into Hangar 13. In 2004, a port version of Mafia would make its way over to PS2 and Xbox with mixed reviews. Development on Mafia began back in 1998, and the codename for the game originally was Gangster. It was going to be similar to the Driver franchise. Fortunately, it ended up being completely different. Inspired by several crime films like Godfather, Goodfellas, obviously, the Prohibition era itself, Chicago, Al Capone. Now, what's interesting is Mafia was originally slated to come out 2 years prior in 2000, which means it could have came out before GTA 3, but it was delayed 2 years due to Illusion changing the game engine. And that was probably for the best if they had to delay the game by 2 years in order to put it on a better game engine than what they were working on originally. Mafia was nominated for several awards, and they ended up winning GameSpot's Best Music in PC Games. Overall rating, according to Metacritic, is 88 out of 100. No, we're not going to talk about the PS2 Xbox ports. The lifetime sales for Mafia would eventually end up selling 2 million copies, according to Take-Two in 2008. The success of Mafia City of Lost Heaven would lead to the launch of the franchise itself, with Mafia 2 in 2010, Mafia 3 in 2016, and 2020 saw the remake of the original Mafia in Mafia Definitive Edition. And as you may have noticed, I've been trying to do a little back and forth between Mafia on my PC as well as Mafia Definitive Edition. And in my opinion, Mafia Definitive Edition is a worthy remake to the original Mafia. They put a lot of hard work, love, attention to detail into the world and the story and the characters of both the original Mafia as well as Mafia Definitive Edition. And the City of Lost Heaven is almost accurate to its original version. There are some differences I noticed when I attempted to do a side-by-side as I clip back and forth in the B-roll between Mafia on my PC and Mafia Definitive Edition. There was also a few reworks here and there between Lost Heaven's original form and the Definitive Edition version in the remake, plus a few locations in the new Lost Heaven were renamed from the original version. But overall, Mafia Definitive Edition is definitely worth playing, especially if you never had a chance to play the original Mafia game. Most of my viewers will know that I started the channel as a GTA player, and yeah, I've put other content on the channel as well, but at the core is Grand Theft Auto, and I was a Grand Theft Auto fan prior to Mafia, the original GTA on PS1, GTA 2 on PC, and then in 2001 when GTA 3 came out for PlayStation 2. As much as I love playing GTA 3 and then a year later with GTA Vice City, I really feel like Illusion Softworks brought something very special to the gaming world, especially like open world crime games, when it came to Mafia City of Lost Heaven. There were so many things about this game that were just amazing, especially for its time back in 2002. The world that was created by Illusion Softworks when it came to Mafia was amazing. Not just the world itself, but the setting, the story, the characters. The protagonist, Tommy Angelo, starts off as a normal guy, struggling through the Great Depression in the Prohibition era as a cab driver, trying to make money in order to pay the rent, as well as keep food on the table, and he's just trying to make a living. He's out there doing fairs at night in Lost Heaven, when two gangsters cross his path one night, and he ends up getting them back to the Salieri bar while they're being pursued by Morello's men. And unfortunately, because he happened to be the cab driver that night, fate ultimately leads him to joining the Salieri crime family. So it is fascinating that Tommy Angelo does not start off as a criminal, but fate and the times he lives in forces him into the Salieri crime family, for better and for worse. Ultimately, there are consequences that occur throughout the events from start to finish in Mafia, the City of Lost Heaven, because of the choices that Tommy Angelo ends up making throughout the game. But there's a lot of great supporting characters that you end up meeting and interacting with, such as Sam, Paul, Don Salieri, a few others as well. And it has a great story, action, a climax, and of course a conclusion, an iconic score. Driving around in the cars from that time period in Lost Heaven, absolutely beautiful for its time, and I still enjoy hopping in every now and then and just reminiscing about this game that I fell in love with about 20 years ago. And one of the other things I obviously enjoy doing is whenever you're just in the mood in Free Ride or Free Ride Extreme when you beat the game, is driving around, jumping out of your car, and just going to town with your Tommy gun or 1911, getting into epic shootouts with the Lost Heaven Police Department. But Illusion put a lot of care into this game and made it as realistic as possible. Unlike GTA, where you could just drive around to your heart's content, you actually had to follow the rules in Mafia. You couldn't run stop signs if there's a cop nearby, or you couldn't go over the speed limit if there was a cop car nearby, or else they would pull you over and you would have to pay a ticket. If you didn't pay the ticket, they would try to arrest you, and then they would try to ultimately kill you. I appreciated the escalation when it came to Tommy's interaction with law enforcement. And in the original game, unfortunately, the Steam version and I think the GOG versions of Mafia, the background music was stripped out of the game because of licensing issues. But in each region of the map, there were unique songs that would play when you're driving around Little Italy or downtown or Central Island, as well as Chinatown and other parts of Lost Heaven. More than that, the sound of Mafia, the City of Lost Heaven, is amazing, and I decided to keep the sound in. So even if we're switching back and forth between Mafia, City of Lost Heaven and Mafia Definitive Edition in the B-roll, I'm using the audio from Mafia, City of Lost Heaven. You hear the cars, sometimes you hear the people, you hear the traffic, you can even hear the background music. Even if I get copyright claimed, I don't care. I'm just going to keep it in there. And depending on where we are in the game, you hear other like nature sound effects. You'll hear birds. You'll hear other elements as well. So obviously there was a lot of attention to detail, love and care and hard work put into Mafia, the City of Lost Heaven by everybody that was involved at Illusion Softworks, which is now part of Hangar 13. And when it comes to the music being pulled out of Mafia because of licensing, yeah, I ranted about that some time ago, and I'll just throw that below in the description section in case you're interested. There have been a few games over the years that could be considered GTA clones or heavily inspired by Grand Theft Auto, but I think that Mafia is its own thing, and yeah, there are similarities between Grand Theft Auto and Mafia. Open world, crime-based, vehicles, guns. But as we talked about earlier, development on the original Mafia game began in 1998. In other words, Grand Theft Auto was still top-down. It had yet to make it over to 3D. That doesn't happen until 2001 with Grand Theft Auto 3. And if Mafia would have stuck to the original engine, it probably would have come out in 2000, a year prior, but it would have ended up being a disaster. So I'm glad that Illusion was smart enough to realize that the engine they were originally working with didn't work, and they had to go with something else. And I think that it paid off by delaying the game by additional 2 years. And I think the lesson here is not to rush a game out and to only put it out when it's ready, because first impressions matter in a lot of ways. In this case, when it comes to brand new video games, you can put a lot of hard work into a game, but if it has issues or a bad story and bad characters or a boring world, then people aren't really going to be interested in picking it up if it's getting bad reviews. That was not the case with the original Mafia game. In other words, it made a very good first impression, which led to the birth of the Mafia franchise and other games. Mafia 2, Mafia 3, and of course the remake Mafia Definitive Edition, and hopefully future Mafia games down the road. Despite what comes our way when it comes to future video games, be it the next GTA or other open world games in the works right now, I feel like we'll never see a game quite like that of Mafia: The City of Lost Heaven. The fact that they put a lot of effort into trying to make it as real as possible for an open world game, with real characters grounded in the Prohibition, Great Depression era, having to make very realistic choices in order to survive, and ultimately having consequences for those choices that are made. And that's one of the things I've appreciated about both Mafia and Mafia 2, is that at the end of the game, when it comes to a life of crime and all the things that these characters had done, these characters don't exactly get a happy ending. And I think that adds to the realism of this franchise, that at the end of the day, whenever you make decisions or bad things occur, eventually there is consequences for your actions, whether they're good or bad, or somewhere in the gray area, depending on your point of view. Simply just trying to survive the streets of Lost Heaven, from a cab driver to a made man in the Salieri crime family. But if you never get a chance to play the original Mafia game, I would highly recommend you at least check out Mafia Definitive Edition. It is, for the most part, a faithful remake to the original Mafia. And for those of you that also had an opportunity to play Mafia: City of Lost Heaven, what are some of your favorite moments or memories or experiences that you had playing Mafia from the time you spent in Mafia: City of Lost Heaven? Feel free and let us know below in the comments section.